South Korea is often described as a miracle, a country that rose from the ashes of war, a nation with almost no natural resources, a place once dependent on foreign aid. And yet, within a single lifetime, it transformed itself into a global powerhouse. While you are at it, please click like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below. World-leading technology, household name corporations, a culture exported across the planet. On the surface, everything looks successful, but beneath the neon lights and glass towers, something is breaking. Not all at once, not loudly, quietly. Birth rates collapse. Young people disappear from the workforce. Workers burn out faster than they can be replaced. The population ages faster than any society in recorded history. This is not the story of sudden collapse. It's the story of slow suffocation. And the most dangerous thing about slow suffocation is that people don't panic until it's too late. To understand how South Korea reached this point, we have to start with the most basic question any society faces. Who comes next? Demographics are destiny, and South Korea's numbers are alarming. The country's fertility rate has fallen below 1.0, meaning that, on average, women are having fewer than one child over their lifetime. This is not just low. It is historically unprecedented for a modern society. To maintain population stability, a country needs a fertility rate of about 2.1. South Korea is operating at less than half that. Every generation is smaller than the one before it. This doesn't just mean fewer babies. It means fewer students, fewer soldiers, fewer workers, fewer taxpayers. Entire school districts are shutting down due to lack of children. Rural towns are aging into silence. Military planners are scrambling to maintain troop numbers. But the most dangerous consequence lies decades ahead. South Korea's pension and social security systems depend on a steady stream of young workers paying into the system. That system was designed for a population pyramid. What South Korea now has is an inverted pyramid, a small base holding up a massive top. As the population ages, healthcare costs explode. Elderly care becomes a national burden. Taxes rise on a shrinking workforce. By the mid-2050s, the national pension system is projected to be depleted. At that point, the government faces impossible choices. Raise taxes drastically, cut benefits to the elderly, increase debt, or all three. Demographics don't respond to policy speeches. You cannot vote your way out of missing generations. So why are people not having children? To answer that, we need to understand how life feels inside the system. In South Korea, competition begins almost immediately. Children are ranked early, compared constantly, measured relentlessly. Education is framed not as learning, but as survival. From elementary school, students prepare not just for exams, but for their future social position. After school doesn't mean rest. It means private academies, late nights, homework stacked on homework. Sleep becomes optional. Teenagers regularly study into the early morning hours. Failure feels permanent. Success feels fragile. By the time students enter adulthood, many are already burned out. Then comes the job market. A small number of prestigious companies attract massive competition. Thousands apply. Hundreds qualify. Only a few are chosen. Degrees multiply. Certificates pile up. Internships stretch unpaid. And still, employment is uncertain. Meanwhile, housing prices skyrocket. Home ownership feels impossible. Rent consumes massive portions of income. Marriage becomes financially terrifying. Children feel like a luxury reserved for the wealthy. So people delay. They wait for stability that never arrives. A growing number of young adults are categorized as not working, not studying, and not training. Not because they lack ability, but because the effort no longer feels connected to reward. When a society teaches people that no matter how hard they try, they will still struggle, people disengage. And that disengagement feeds directly into the next crisis. Work. South Korea is known globally for its work ethic. But behind that reputation lies a darker reality. Long hours are expected. Leaving on time is seen as disloyal. Unpaid overtime is routine, even when productivity doesn't require it. Many employees remain at work simply to be seen. Hierarchy dominates workplace culture. Age and rank often matter more than competence. This creates environments where abuse is normalized. Verbal humiliation, public scolding, threats disguised as motivation. Labor protections exist on paper, but enforcement is weak. Reporting abuse often leads to retaliation or career stagnation. For foreign workers, the situation can be even worse. Many visas are directly tied to employers. Lose the job, and you lose the right to remain in the country. This creates extreme power imbalances. Foreign employees endure unpaid overtime, contract violations, and mistreatment in silence. Not because they accept it, but because leaving means deportation. This culture doesn't just burn people out. It teaches them that adulthood equals suffering. And people who associate adulthood with suffering don't plan futures. They survive month to month. They don't marry. They don't have children. And slowly, the workforce shrinks. South Korea's economic rise was built on speed and discipline. But speed has limits. Today, potential economic growth has slowed toward the 1% range. That's dangerously low for a country facing massive demographic headwinds. Many core industries rely on older manufacturing and export models. Meanwhile, competitors, especially China, operate faster, cheaper, and at massive scale. South Korea also carries a growing number of zombie firms. Companies kept alive by debt and state support rather than productivity. These firms absorb labor, block competition, suppress innovation. Rigid labor regulations make restructuring difficult. Young companies struggle to compete with entrenched giants. Foreign investment becomes cautious. The economy loses flexibility, precisely when flexibility is essential. And political instability only worsens the situation. Economic systems run on confidence. Political instability drains that confidence quickly. Recent turbulence, including emergency powers and short-lived martial law, shocked investors and citizens alike. Even brief instability leaves long shadows. Markets remember uncertainty. Citizens lose trust. When people no longer believe institutions are stable, long-term planning disappears. And without long-term planning, demographic recovery becomes nearly impossible. Which brings us to the final pressure point: aging. By 2050, nearly 40% of South Korea's population is projected to be over 65. This is unprecedented. It means fewer workers supporting more retirees. Healthcare systems stretch thin. Caregiver shortages become severe. Taxes rise on a shrinking base. Young people face heavier burdens, which discourages family formation even further. It's a feedback loop. Fewer children lead to fewer workers. Fewer workers increase pressure. Increased pressure discourages births. Once this cycle accelerates, stopping it becomes incredibly difficult. Over the years, South Korea has tried to buy its way out of demographic collapse. Cash bonuses for newborns, monthly child allowances, housing subsidies for families, free childcare programs. On paper, these policies look generous. In practice, they barely move the needle. Why? Because money does not fix exhaustion. People aren't avoiding children because of a lack of one-time payments. They're avoiding children because of lifetime pressure. A few $1,000s doesn't change. 12-hour workdays, unpaid overtime expectations, expensive housing markets, education systems that punish failure, job insecurity well into adulthood. Raising a child in South Korea is not just expensive, it's emotionally draining. Parents are expected to fund private education, extracurriculars, tutoring, and test preparation from an early age. If you cannot do that, you fear your child will fall behind permanently. So couples make a rational decision. They choose 0 children over 1 child they cannot fully support in a hyper-competitive system. Government policies focus on symptoms, not structure. And because the structure remains unchanged, the incentives fail. This creates frustration on both sides. Citizens feel unheard. Policymakers feel helpless. And trust erodes even further. While Seoul glows brighter every year, the rest of the country fades. Small towns shrink. Villages empty. Schools close. Entire regions are populated mostly by the elderly. Young people leave for cities and never return. This creates a geographic imbalance. Healthcare access becomes uneven. Public services become inefficient. Infrastructure maintenance costs rise. Abandoned homes decay. Farmland goes unused. Local economies stagnate. The countryside becomes a quiet warning of the future. What happens when an entire nation begins to resemble its rural outskirts? No amount of economic growth in Seoul can fully compensate for nationwide depopulation. A country cannot function if large sections quietly disappear. Many aging countries turn to immigration to stabilize their workforce. South Korea talks about it, but action remains limited. Cultural homogeneity has long been central to Korean identity. Large-scale immigration challenges that identity, socially and politically. Foreign workers are often welcomed only temporarily. They fill labor gaps, but are not encouraged to settle permanently. Paths to citizenship remain narrow. Social integration is slow. This creates a contradiction. South Korea needs workers, but hesitates to fully accept them. As a result, labor shortages grow. Caregiving roles remain understaffed. Manufacturing struggles to find employees. Without immigration reform, demographic decline accelerates. But immigration reform requires cultural shifts, and cultural shifts take time. Time South Korea may not have. South Korea's education system helped build its economic miracle. High literacy, strong math and science skills, disciplined learning environments. But success created rigidity. The system now optimizes for test performance, not creativity. Students memorize rather than explore. Risk-taking is discouraged. Failure is stigmatized. This limits innovation. In a rapidly changing global economy, adaptability matters more than rote excellence. Startups struggle to compete with traditional career paths. Many young people feel trapped between corporate conformity or economic instability. When a system produces excellent test takers but hesitant innovators, long-term growth slows. And slowing growth worsens every other crisis. Gender relations in South Korea have grown increasingly tense. Workplace inequality persists. Career interruptions penalize women. Child-rearing expectations remain uneven. Many women see marriage as a career risk. Many men feel economically insecure and socially blamed. This creates resentment, not cooperation. Online discourse becomes polarized. Trust between genders erodes. When partnership feels adversarial, family formation collapses. Societies don't reproduce through ideology. They reproduce through cooperation. And cooperation is weakening. South Korea has one of the highest stress levels among developed nations. Long hours, social comparison, financial pressure, mental health struggles are widespread, but often hidden. Burnout is normalized. Seeking help carries stigma. Many suffer silently. A mentally exhausted population cannot sustain long-term growth. Creativity declines. Motivation fades. Hope becomes scarce. When hope disappears, birth rates don't recover. They collapse further. A small number of massive conglomerates dominate the economy. They provide stability, but also suppress competition. Smaller firms struggle to grow. Entrepreneurs face barriers. Economic power concentrates. This limits wage growth. It reduces mobility. Young workers feel locked into narrow paths. When economic opportunity narrows, social optimism shrinks with it. As older workers retire, replacements are scarce. Hospitals lack staff. Factories automate rapidly. Service industries cut hours. Automation helps, but cannot replace caregiving, education, or human judgment entirely. Labor scarcity pushes wages up, but also prices. Inflation risks rise. Economic inequality widens. And pressure on the remaining workforce intensifies. Despite everything, South Korea is not doomed. It still has world-class infrastructure, advanced technology, a highly educated population, cultural influence, strategic global position. But strengths only matter if used wisely. Reform must be structural, not cosmetic. Work culture must change. Housing must become affordable. Immigration must be realistic. Family life must be compatible with modern work. South Korea's story is not the story of a single mistake. It is the story of many small choices, repeated for decades, that slowly bent a society out of balance. A system built for speed became too rigid to adapt. A culture built on discipline became too exhausted to sustain itself. An economy built for growth forgot to make space for life outside of work. The demographic collapse did not begin with falling birth rates. It began when time, rest, and dignity became scarce. When young people realized that working harder did not guarantee security. When starting a family felt like a financial gamble instead of a natural step. When employees, both Korean and foreign, learned that loyalty often meant silence, unpaid labor, and endurance without protection. Over time, exhaustion replaced ambition. Aging accelerated. The workforce shrank. Pressure intensified on those who remained. Economic stagnation followed, not because of a lack of talent, but because creativity cannot thrive under fear, hierarchy, and burnout. Innovation slowed, risk-taking disappeared, and the future began to feel smaller than the past. Political instability only deepened the uncertainty. Trust in institutions weakened. Investor confidence faded, and the sense of national direction blurred. South Korea did not collapse suddenly. It began to quietly stall, and that may be the most dangerous outcome of all, because collapse is loud, but stagnation feels normal until it's too late. Yet this story is not finished. South Korea still has immense strengths. It has knowledge, infrastructure, global influence, and generations who understand what is no longer working. The question is not whether the country can survive. The question is whether it can change fast enough, not with slogans or incentives, but with structural reform. Shorter work hours, real labor protections, affordable housing, a family life that does not require sacrifice of dignity, an economy that values human sustainability as much as productivity. Because no nation can outwork its own biology. No economy can grow forever if people are too tired to live. And no society can thrive if its future generation never arrives. South Korea's story is a warning, not just to itself, but to every modern nation walking the same path. The real question now is simple. Will South Korea become a lesson the world learns from, or a future the world repeats? Don't forget to subscribe on your way out. See you next video.